On April 21st, 1838, a man who would later become one of the first leaders in environmentalism was born in Dunbar, Scotland. His name was John Muir. He lived a quiet life in Scotland until 1849 when he and his family emigrated to Wisconsin. His father was harsh and brutal, and Muir learned the principles of discipline. He was brought up with a religion and was even forced to memorize the Bible. He had 5 sisters and 2 brothers, and all were very close. His family owned a farm, and Muir was forced to do chores from sundown to sunset. He learned to love the Wisconsin wilderness and developed his enthusiasm for nature. He would explore the forests around his home and took care of all nature he came upon. During his time on the farm, he started inventing things and even won awards for his inventions. He made tools that would get him out of bed or even light the fireplace. While at the fairgrounds this morning, we saw some very ingenious specimens of mechanism in the form of clocks made by Mr. John Muir of Buffalo, Marquette County. They were without cases and were whittled out of pine wood. The wheels moved with beautiful evenness. One registered not only hours but minutes, seconds, and days of the month. The other was in the shape of a scythe, the wheels being arranged along the part representing the blade. It was hung in dwarf bur oak, very tastefully ornamented with moss around its roots. We will venture to predict that very few articles will attract as much attention as these products of Mr. Muir's ingenuity. Wisconsin State Journal. When he was old enough, he joined the Wisconsin University for 3 years, but left to explore the wilderness. He worked his way through the unexplored United States. He went all over North America, including Canada and Alaska. While in Alaska, he became known to the local group of Native Americans. He discovered many glaciers in the Glacier Bay area of Alaska, and even named a glacier after himself, the Muir Glacier. To the lover of the wilderness, Alaska is one of the most wonderful countries in the world. John Muir. He had started exploring California and eventually in 1880 settled for his wife, Louise Wanda Strentzel. They had 2 daughters and moved to Martinez, California. He worked on a fruit farm in Martinez for his father-in-law for 10 years before he turned his eye to Yosemite Park in Northern California. He started publishing many papers on Yosemite, and he even published 10 books fighting for preservation. A reporter named Robert Underwood Johnson from Century Magazine noticed these papers and started featuring them in his magazine. Muir began to direct his attention to how the sheep that grazed the grassland of Yosemite were slowly destroying the land. He also talked about the lumberjacks cutting down every tree in sight. He urged the reader to take action and to protect nature's beauty. He believed it was right for all to be able to enjoy the beauty of the world without it being destroyed by the capitalists.
With the theory that there are some areas which must be preserved, set aside. That led to his attempt to convince Congress and President Teddy Roosevelt to commence the setting aside via congressional acts the several national parks in this country.
God has cared for these trees, saved them from drought, disease, avalanches, and 1,000 tempests and floods, but he cannot save them from fools. John Muir. Muir left his family and fought a long, tedious fight for preservation. John Muir pursued his dream of preserving the world and strived to achieve it. Partly religious and partly just trying to save the earth, John Muir was striving to save Yosemite because of his philosophical view that God had intended to create nature a specific way, not for it to be destroyed. This view is the driving force that John Muir used to write his books and essays talking about natural beauty and preservation for all. He also wanted to dissuade his father's views and enjoy nature as a whole. He believed that there was no ugly nature, that God had only created beauty. God never made an ugly landscape. All that the sun shines on is beautiful, so long as it is wild. John Muir. He and reporter Robert Underwood Johnson worked hard, and after many series of essays, Congress made Yosemite a national park in 1890. This and his help with many other national parks gave him the title, the father of our national park system. He believed it was his responsibility to preserve the natural beauty nature had.
John Muir involved himself mostly in the conservation movement to save the nation's treasures, as he called them, from the woodcutters who would chop down virtually every tree for financial reasons. He thought that there was some great significance, partly religion, in saving the great treasures of the West and Alaska, in addition to saving the redwoods and being known as the father of the national park. He distinguished himself in the field of botany, meaning finding the various plant lives that lived and thrived in Yosemite and the Sierra Nevada range.
In 1892, Muir formed the Sierra Club, a group dedicated to preserving nature from the evils that threatened it.
Well, John Muir, not only the founder of the Sierra Club, but he was also the father of Yosemite Valley. He visited there as a very young man and actually made the second ascent of Half Dome, and did it really in the wintertime, which was quite a tremendous feat. He invited presidents, including Theodore Roosevelt, to visit, and the establishment of the national park. In 1916, certainly John Muir was the founding father of that movement.
They worked hard to preserve Yosemite, and in 1903, President Theodore Roosevelt visited Muir in Yosemite. This was due to his recent publication of his book, Our National Parks. Muir believed that being friends with a powerful leader such as Theodore Roosevelt would help his campaign to preserve the world. He persuaded Roosevelt into returning the Yosemite Valley and Mariposa Grove as part of Yosemite National Park under federal protection. They camped under the stars as they talked about Roosevelt's plans and environmentalism. In the year 1901, the biggest battle of the Sierra Club would begin. This group fought many hard battles in the Sierra Nevada, but none as big as the battle for Hetch Hetchy Valley. The Great Fire and Earthquake of San Francisco in 1906 created a need for a water supply in Hetch Hetchy Valley. Dam Hetch Hetchy, as well dam for water tanks the people's cathedrals and churches, for no holier temple has ever been consecrated by the heart of man. John Muir believed this valley was a second Yosemite, that there were many better places to put the reservoir. He refused to let this part of Yosemite be destroyed. In these ravaging, money-mad days, San Francisco capitalists are now doing their best to destroy the Yosemite Park, the most wonderful of all our great mountain national parks. Beginning on the Tuolumne side, they are trying with a lot of simple ingenuity to get the government's permissions to dam and destroy the Hetch Hetchy Valley for a reservoir. Simply that comparatively private gain may be made out of universal public loss. While of course the Sierra Club is doing all it can to save the valley, the Honorable Secretary of the Interior has not yet announced his decision in the case, but in all that has come and gone, nothing discouraging is yet in sight on our side of the fight. John Muir. The Sierra Club fought for many long, hard years before finally admitting defeat in 1913 when Congress passed the Raker Act, allowing for the valley to be filled with a reservoir to be put in place. This part of Yosemite would be destroyed. Let me assure you that we have only begun to fight, and we are not going to rest until we have established the principle that our national park shall be held forever inviolate, and until we have demonstrated to the satisfaction of everyone, including yourself, that the American people stand for that principle. We are going to keep up the good fight without fear or favor, if it shall take until doomsday. John Muir. The mountains are calling and I must go, John Muir said for the last time on December 24th, 1914. He had died in a hospital in Los Angeles visiting his daughter. After his death, the Sierra Club still continued on and is still thriving today with over 1 million followers. The Sierra Club continues to do their part in preserving the world.
Yosemite, as I've mentioned before, is one of the most spectacular scenes in national parks in the United States. As you know, that most countries throughout the world have national parks to protect their scenic, their wildlife, and certainly for the enjoyment of the people. And we have to protect it for future generations.
And now the Yosemite Valley and other magnificent and astonishing places are still there because of John Muir's vision. John Muir is a true leader because he knew his point in life and he pursued it. His point was to save and protect the trees. Not only did he protect nature, but he protected our right to see it. I only went out for a walk and finally concluded to stay out till sundown. For really going out, I found, was really going in. John Muir.